Good morning, everybody. It is 8:30 now, so I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. So welcome to today's TransIT 5.0 testing training. Um, so these sessions are all being recorded, excuse me, and then the recordings will be sent out and made available to everybody once we are finished. At the end of the week, when all of the sessions have completed, Patty will be sending out a link to our YouTube channel, which is a private YouTube channel, where all of the sessions will be available in case there was one that you missed or one that you wanted to watch that was from a session that you didn't attend. So the purpose of today's training is, of course, to focus on all of the new functionality in our TransIT 5.0 when it comes to things like tasks, workflows, and scenarios, both building and updating. And then also how to execute and manage a round of testing and the changes that came with reports in 5.0. For starters, we do hope that you will be signing into TransIT. We want this session to be interactive. So I did paste into the chat the link to sign into our demo domain. So you won't be signing into our usual production domain for this. You will be signing into our demo domain. To sign in, you will still be using your same email address that you're used to signing into TransIT with, but the password is going to be TransIT5. So if you're looking at my screen now, I also have the URL displayed on the screen in case you happen to join, excuse me, after I did the paste into the chat. And so you want to make sure, as it says on the screen there, that when you sign in, you are not signing into Internet Explorer. I know that sometimes when you click the link, depending on what your default browser may be, it may automatically open into Internet Browser, but you will need to sign into a different browser because Internet Explorer will not be supported in TransIT. So again, the URL is on the screen there, and then you're signing in with your regular email address and the password TransIT5. So this demo domain is going to be available until we go live. So I guess as the week goes on, the number of days get shorter, but that's until May 29th. So TransIT 5.0 will be going live on May 29th, but anytime between now and then that you want to sign in and play around in TransIT, you're certainly welcome to do so. Any content that you make before we go live, it will not carry over into our production domain. So you're welcome to create anything that you like, but I just wouldn't recommend really making anything that's really you're hoping to be useful for you down the road, because it will be lost when we turn on 5.0. Small disclaimer, as I go through training today, if I am making comparisons and referring to our current production environment for TransIT, I will refer to it as 4.x. That's how we refer to it at Make Solutions. And when I'm referring to our new release of TransIT, it will be 5.0. So you will hear me say that several times throughout training today. So having said that, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So I'll just close this. So as you can see here, I am in our demo domain here, and I'm going to sign in using my my email address and the password TransIT5. When you sign in for the first time, you're going to get this terms of service window or screen. And on there, we've got two different PDF documents, one that's for the Make Solutions privacy policy and the other for our terms of service. So you're welcome to open up those documents and review what's there. and then you'll need to select the box to accept our privacy policy and terms of service, and then click the accept button. So of course, because we're signing into the demo domain, you will need to sign in again you will need to accept it again once we go live with our production environment. So once you accept the privacy policy, you'll never need to accept that again once it's done in our production environment. So I have signed in. As usual with TransIT, when you sign in, you're brought to the projects page for your organization. When you sign in today, you should notice that you are signing into the normal organization that you're used to being able to see when you sign into TransIT. And the reason for that is because we wanted to make sure that while we go through training today, that you're seeing content that you're used to seeing, because we want you to be as comfortable as possible as we go through training today. So some changes to note from the projects page. The first I will point out is if we look in the top right-hand corner here, we no longer have the gear icon displayed beside our name. So your name in the top right corner is still actionable. So when I click on that link, it now takes me to the user settings page. So in 4.x TransIT, when you clicked your name link, you were brought to the page just to change your password. Now there's more functions that happen using your name. So the user settings page, the top section there is for your email and SMS notification settings. So you would obviously check the unchecked box to turn on the notification settings. The email sent to field is going to be populated by your current username, so the email address that you normally sign into TransIT with. But that field is a free text field. So let's say for whatever reason you decide that you want the email notifications to come to a different email address than the one that you use to sign into TransIT, you're welcome to type into that field whatever email address you'd like. And when you hover your cursor over this little icon here, it does tell you that as well, can be different from your normal login. It will retain that information. So if I was to log out and log back in, it's going to still show the same email address that I previously entered into that field. The next is for SMS messages. So at this point in time, we do not have the SMS notifications available just yet, but they definitely will be coming. And so when we do go live with it, we will of course let everybody know. And so you would check the unchecked box to turn it on and enter your telephone number into that field. Although it is not available at this point in time, it is recommended that you put your phone number in there if you're going to be participating in a round of testing, or also just to populate inside the roster. So that would be good for participating in a round of testing, for example, and you're all operating remotely and you want people to be able to get a hold of you. You can type your phone number into there and it's going to save to the roster list. The next section there is roster. So your roster status, your status is going to retain from when the last time you logged in. So last time was doing training for plans, and I'm going to say training for testing. So it's just a free text field. There's nothing to say that you have to fill in that field. It's just information that populates to the roster so that people know what it is you're doing while you're in TransIT. The next is the positions. So positions would be for where you can identify which positions you're going to be participating as for a round of testing. When we get into the testing component later, I'll also show you another spot where you can identify which positions you're going to be participating as for testing, but you're welcome to set them up from here as well. So if I wanted to set my positions up here, I would click this icon, which then opens the position coverage window. You'd be able to either type into this field or select from the list here. But let's say I'm going to participate as the EDRN. I type in there and I press enter. I could have also clicked the magnifying glass. And so let's say I'm going to be the EDRN and EDRN2 for my rounds of testing. Then I click save. And so that information has been updated down here. I previously had EDMD and now I have EDRN. Then we still can update our password from this particular window. So there's still no character requirements. You're welcome to have your password be whatever it is that you would like your password to be. When you go to sign into 5.0, when we are in our production domain, you will still be logging in with your same username and password that you currently have. So the TransIT 5 password is just when you're playing around in the demonstration domain. So I've saved all of my details there. And I get to go back home. My home page is always going to be the projects page. So anytime that you're playing around in TransIT or working in TransIT and you want to come back to this projects page, it would just be clicking home. You would also be able to click on your organization name in the top left-hand corner. So from the projects page, you'll see a very similar look and feel across all of the different pages in TransIT. One of our biggest changes with TransIT 5.0 is that we've really gone away from a lot of icons. We've gone with a much cleaner look. So the majority of the actions that you're going to be completing inside TransIT will happen from a right click. So that's either a right click from the header. So anytime I say header, I'm referring to this dark blue bar that's going to be on all of the different screens. So if I right click my header, I've got a list of actions that I can complete. Or if I right click an item that's underneath my header, I've got a different set of actions to complete. So rule of thumb with 5.0, if you're looking for something, right click, and that's going to be how you get your action. Also, with all of the different headers, you're going to see when you hover your cursor inside the header that there's a filter icon and a sort icon. So the sort, if it's something that's alphabetical, it's going to sort first alphabetical, and then it will go in the opposite order if you click the sort a second time. And then if it's something that's either a date or something numerical, it's going to, of course, do numerical order or reverse numerical order. In the updated column, which you'll see on various different pages, if you hover your cursor inside that column, it's going to show you, first it's going to show you who the person was that created that item, so in this case, the project, and then who was the last person who made an update to that. So that's functionality that is currently available in 4.x and still available in 5.0. So if I'm wanting to create a new project, I'm going to click this icon here. So you'll notice on all the different pages, it's going to be the same icon that you see when you're wanting to create something new. So in this case, I'm wanting to create a new project. So I'm going to call my project testing. go. I can copy and paste it to the description there and save. One thing I will also say, I'm currently, I live in Canada, and so we are currently locked down. So I'm not necessarily working in the most ideal situation because I've got my kids home. I also have my husband working from home. So if you need something during training, please just call out to me because it's really hard for me to check the chat, and so I don't want to miss any of the questions that you have. But please just interrupt me if you have a question. Okay, so I have created my project here. So if I was wanting to copy tasks from my current state or from a project to my new project, in 4.x, it was a combination of icon clicks and link, hyperlink clicks. And now if you're wanting to copy tasks from either your current state or from a project to your new project, you'll go inside the project that you're wanting to go into. And as I mentioned, we've gone away from a lot of icons. So, here's some I'll copy. So if I want to select from this window here, I'm going to click the row for the first item that I want to copy. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to select the last item that I want to select. And so, of course, that selected everything that's in between there. I could also hold down Control and then select something that's not quite in the sequence there. If I'm wanting to copy from this project to the project that I just created, I will right-click and I will select Copy. I'm then going to go back home. So I can either click Home, I can click my my organization link, or I can click Back. That's another big change in 5.0. I've spent the last 9 years inside TransIT training people to never click on the back button, because in 4.x, the back button never did anything for you. Whereas now in 5.0, you do have the option to click the back button. So I copied from my current state, and now I'm going to go into my project here. And of course, because it's a brand new project, there's nothing in there. But I'm going to right-click my header here, and I'm going to select Paste. There we go. And so now that's what you would do if you want to copy tasks from one project or from your current state project into a new project. I'm going to go back out to my projects page for now, because we'll get into tasks just after this. So let's say that I no longer need my my project. I can right-click and I can inactivate my project. Anytime you go to inactivate something, it is going to give you the message to make sure that you are wanting to inactivate what you're inactivating. So I'm going to accept, and of course it's removed from my view here. In 4.x TransIT, anytime you inactivated something, if you're wanting to restore that item, you would click that icon that was always in the top left-hand corner that looked like a trash can with a magnifying glass that people always assumed was the search icon, but it is not the search icon. So in this case, if I was wanting to restore something that had been inactivated, it's a right-click from the header and view inactive. So again, that's going to be the exact same functionality across all of the different windows in TransIT. So if I was wanting to restore, I would just right-click and select to restore, and then I would right-click my header to go back to view the active projects. And that's brought me back here. If I was wanting to filter on something, I would just click the filter icon. I'll filter to only see current state. Of course, when it's a short list, it's likely not necessary for you to use that. It's more helpful when you're on a page like the task page. But if I was wanting to get rid of that filter, I would then click on the filter field or icon and get rid of that. And then it restores everything that I want. Another thing that you can do across all of the different pages in TransIT, when you right click here, if you scroll down to where it says column, you can see that it's showing me the names of the different columns. If I wanted to remove one of the columns from my view, so let's say, for example, here, I don't care about seeing the updated column, I can deselect the option here, and it's now dropped off my view. That does not save when you log out. It is something that if you want to have a particular view, it is something that you're going to need to set each time you log in. So, and it's also not something that's going to affect anybody else. It's just going to affect the user who's doing it. So of course, if I want to get that back, I'm going to go back. I've right-clicked the header. I'm going to go to columns and I'm going to reselect that option, which is then put it back here for me. If I was wanting to move a column, so let's say for whatever reason I wanted the updated column to be before the description column, I can click and hold my column field here and I can drag it to a different location. So again, you have a lot of freedom to make to customize the way things look inside TransIT if that's something that you care to do. Okay, so now we're going to go into okay, hold on. I just got a message. Some folks from CNC need to get email. Patty, are you on? I know that you joined earlier. Does not look like it. Sorry, I apologize. There's a few people that did not receive the link for training today. So I just received an email saying that. So we're going to take just a 5-minute break so I can make sure that the email link gets sent out to everybody. And then we'll pick up in 5 minutes. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Got that email sent off to everybody. Um, so we're going to move into the testing page now. So we're going to do it from the current state in this case. So I'm going to click the current state link. And so you can see, as I said, we've gone away from a lot of icons. There used to be quite a few icons in the toolbar of the task page, and now we only have these two icons. So the first icon is for import. So this is for, you can see when I open this window here, it says import tasks and workflows. So in 4.x TransIT, when you were importing, you would have to do them separately under their respective pages. Whereas now you can do the import from either, and you're gonna have the capability to import both tasks and workflows at the same time. In 4.x TransIT, you need to make sure that you uploaded all of your tasks, any new task first, and then you could import your workflows. And the reason for that is because if you imported a workflow that the tasks weren't yet in your organization, then your workflow would be missing those tasks, and you'd have to then go backwards and import the tasks and either delete the workflow and re-import it or add the tasks individually to the workflow. Now it's much easier because if you were to import a workflow that the tasks were not yet inside your organization, they would automatically be imported as well. So I'm going to do a search here. I'm going to look at just workflows, and I'm going to include global. So I then press enter. Oops. And so now it's returned to search for things that had appointment in it. And I selected the workflows only and to include global. Looking at the icons that are displayed beside the different workflows here, the globe icon is telling me that it is a global workflow. And the second icon here is telling me that it's a workflow specifically. I can choose to select a filter option. So let's say I'm looking to import from a specific vendor. I can select the vendor filter. And it's then going to sort to only show me the options for that particular vendor. So I can see that I have all of these workflows available to me for this particular vendor, and that all of the workflows here are global, and again, workflows. So I know that none of this exists inside my current organization. I had the option to either individually select items, or I could do the box here, which is going to select all of the options underneath. Once I've selected what it is that I want to select, I can click import. As you see, when I hover my cursor over the description field, it's showing me exactly what's inside that workflow. So it was harder to do from an import before when you're importing workflows, because it was hard to know for sure what the workflow steps were unless you were familiar with the tasks that were in there. But now when you hover your cursor, it tells you exactly what the steps are inside that workflow, making it easier to identify whether or not it is a workflow that you want. So again, after I've selected what I want to select, I can then import. Anytime you do an import, you're going to get this window that notifies you to say that the import is going to happen in the background. So let's say you're importing a large number of workflows at the same time. Sometimes that would take a minute or two to do, and your screen would just sit on that same screen waiting to finish importing whatever it was you were asking to import. But now it tells you that it's going to be happening in the background. So all you need to do is acknowledge this dialog box, and it's going to bring you back to the task page, or if you're on the workflows page, obviously the workflows page. And it is going to continue to import those workflows in the background. If I want, I can then search here to look for the workflows. And here's the workflows that I just imported. As I mentioned, the next icon is always going to be a create new. So if I was wanting to create a new task, I would click that icon. Small change that you'll see from this page here in comparison to 4.x, you can see that the vendor field is now the first of these three fields. So in 4.x, the first drop-down list field that you had was service, then subservice, then vendor, and we just reversed the order of those here. So I can create my new task. I can select my vendor, which the list of vendors is still, of course, going to be the list of vendors that you have currently turned on in TransIT. I may have used this name already. And then you can either choose to select a service or subservice, but you don't have to if you don't feel it's necessary. Give a description to your task and click Save. So that's still going to take you, of course, to the task steps page. And the icon that I would click is this new icon. And so there's a few changes when it comes to the task steps page for when you're adding a new step. So you'll see that there's no longer the role field. So in 4.x, at the task level, you would select a role, and then inside a workflow or a scenario, you could select in a workflow, you could select the role that you wanted, and then inside the scenario, you could select the specific position that you wanted. But we've gone away from that, and now basically any position that you have built inside your organization is going to have access to use any task that's available. So at the task level, there's nothing that you need to select for either role or position. The product is, of course, still going to be the same product based on the vendor that you're working with. You still type to these fields, and you still have your details field that still works the same. So I can continue to click details multiple times, and the more times I click it, it's going to give me a number that is associated to the number of times that I've clicked it. What's been added now is we now have the option to select a details field. So if I was to select an option from the list here, it's then going to automatically give me that details field inside my task. The one thing it does not do, it does not give a number. So the idea behind the details field would be, for the most part, you're not going to need a number with the details field. But if you did need to include a number inside one of the fields from the header details, you could just type the number into that field there. But if I was to add, let's say, a different field and then add address again, you can see that it did not assign a number. So the header details fields, excuse me, can also be added to your outcomes as well, and it's going to be exactly the same list. It'll be all the different options that you have when you go to add details to a scenario header. So I've added a step to my task. So to get additional actions for this particular step, or sorry, this particular task, I can right click inside the task here. If I want to insert a step above, I would just select to insert above. If I wanted to edit and open back up that window that I was just in, I would select edit. If I was wanting to copy my step from one scenario, or sorry, from one task to another, I would select copy. And as you can see in brackets here, it's got Control C. So I could also do Control C from my keyboard. So that wasn't available in TransIT before, that has been added. And so when I went into the task that I wanted to paste into, of course, it would be selecting the paste option. I have the option to change. So let's say I don't want to open up my full task here because the only thing that I want to change is the application. I can select change and select application. And when I do that, it opens a window that's just for changing the specific field that I was asking to change. So I can select a different option from the drop-down list here and save, and it would do that for me. I can duplicate, so if I was doing a task where all the steps were a little bit similar, it may be quicker to duplicate and then just edit the step after you've duplicated it. So if I was wanting to make that same kind of application change to all of the steps at the same time, I would select the first one, hold shift and select the last, and then right click and do the same steps. So selecting change, and I'll do application again and select a different application. And so that makes the change to all of the steps at the same time. You also have down here, you can see where it says Clipboard. And under Clipboard, I have the option to copy to Clipboard or paste above from Clipboard. If I was to do the copy to Clipboard option, that gives me the option to copy from TransIT and then paste into Excel.
For now,
I can then, pardon? Did someone have a question?
that's 3 of us over by myself.
Sorry, I just muted all. So yeah, you can copy from TransIT, paste into Excel, and then do the reverse. If you have stuff that is already in Excel and you wanted to get it into TransIT, you could do you could right click and do Clipboard and paste above from Clipboard. So just paste on its own means you're doing something from within TransIT, whereas if you're wanting to do something from outside TransIT, it's the Clipboard option. Of course, if I want to get rid of a task, it's right click and inactivate. Oh, sorry, I had all three selected. To bring a step back, it's inactivate, view inactive steps. And I can restore my option. And then click the header to right click the header to go back to my active steps. So as I said, we can still copy steps from one task to another. So if I right clicked here and clicked copy, went back to my current state task page and went into a different task, I could then either right click the header to paste to the end, or let's say I wanted to paste it above here, I could right click and paste above. And now it's pasted my step that I had from the task that I was in previously. I'm of course going to get rid of this stroke. And I will go back. So one of the icons that is no longer showing there is the search icon, so the binocular icon, and the advanced search icon. And the reason for that is we've got this field here instead. So you can select what you want this field to represent. So you can either select any field. By default, it's on name, number, and description. Or you could also select service, subservice, or vendor. So I'm going to just type a point and comma in here. And again, you can press enter or you can use the binocular icon. So because I'm on name, number, description, it's going to be searching all of those things to see anywhere where the word appointment with a comma is listed for the task. To filter it further, after I've done that, I can select one of my filter options from any of the header fields as well. So let's say I want to look at tasks that are appointment for Cerner. I can type into this field here. And now it's filtered my list to show only tasks that are for Cerner. One of the icons that is no longer there is the icon to show where a task is used inside a scenario. So instead, that has been moved to this new number column here. When you hover your cursor over a task in the number column, you can see that it tells you the name of a scenario. So this is telling me that this task here, this 4474, is currently being used in this regression scheduling scenario. If I was to click on the number hyperlink there, it's going to open this open scenario window for me. And from this window, I can select the scenario that I want to view. So I'm going to look for task number 4474, where it's used in this scenario. So if I click that link, it takes me into my scenario steps. And I can use this filter here. And now here's the task that I was looking for to see where it's being used. I can then go back and back to my my task page here. So I had mentioned that there's no longer positions or roles being selected at the task level. We also no longer select interface transactions at the task level. Interface transactions can be selected at the workflow level or at the scenario level, but they're not done at the task level anymore. Before I go on to workflows, does anybody have any questions about the tasks page? No? Okay, we will go on. So you'll see that the workflows page looks pretty much the same as the task page looked. We've got the same globe icon that we saw on the previous page, and because it's now the import is done at both the task and workflow level combined. If I was to click this icon, you're going to see the exact same window that we saw in the previous under tasks. And so then if I want to create a new workflow, it's still the same create icon. You can still give it a description, select the vendor. And if you wanted to select a different project than the one that you were under, you can select the project that you're wanting to select. And click save. So there's two icons that you'll see inside the workflow steps page. The first one is if you are wanting to create a task from within the workflow that you're inside. So let's say you don't want to go back to the task page. you've searched for a task and it doesn't exist, and so you just want to create a brand new task. You have the option to create a task from in here by clicking this icon, and you'd be able to create the task, and it's going to look the exact same. All the windows are going to look the exact same as they would that we just showed looking from the tasks page. But so if you don't want to have to, if you're not working in different browsers and you don't want to have to go back to the task page. So if I wanted to add a task to my workflow here, the search page is going to look the same. So I can type, I'll just stick with appointment. You can see in this window here, I have include global shown here as well. So if I didn't want to create a new task, I wanted to first see if there was something that was existing inside the global content that I had not brought into my organization yet, I could use this checkbox to say include global. What that would do is first, it would allow you to insert that task right away into your workflow, but it also essentially imports that task into your organization as a whole. So once it's been brought in, whether it's being brought in using the import icon, if it's added, like I'm showing here, using this include global and selecting it here, or it can also be done at the scenario level, and I'll of course show that once we get there. I think I probably just brought in all of the tasks, but
Patty, I have a quick question.
Sure.
When I'm searching for tasks or workflows in my domain, like I'm getting like duplicate tasks, like in the results, like with the same number. You know why that might be?
So does one of them have a globe beside it?
Yeah. So, okay. So it's like whether, I guess I'm like wondering why it's listed twice and why it's not just listed. Oh, is it to differentiate that like one's the global one and one's the one that's in my system already?
So the one that's got the globe beside it would be the global task, whereas the other one would be the one that exists inside your organization already. But if you were to deselect the include global and do the same search again, then you're not going to see the ones with a globe anymore.
Okay, thanks. And it looks like the search results might also, okay, I'm seeing that they're like duplicative because it's the same task number, but they're like assigned a different vendor or service.
Oh,
okay.
yes.
So,
That would
that's
be,
why.
yeah, so that would be the same as well if you were looking in your production domain. So the only time you're allowed to have the same name and number for a task is if you've changed something. So whether that's the service, subservice, or vendor. So you do need to watch for that to make sure that when you're inserting that you are looking in the service, subservice, and vendor columns. But another thing that you have available to you is we no longer have that show and hide link. So before you'd be able to click show and it would show you what the steps are, or you could click hide and it would get rid of them. Now, if you just hover your cursor over the description column for that task, it'll show you exactly which task you're wanting to use. So if you're unsure, you have that option to do a double check before you insert that task into your workflow. Search is not being responsive to me at the moment. So from within your search window, you do have the option to use the filters. And when you do that, it's going to reduce your search. So again, that goes back to if you were seeing multiple, if you wanted to use your filters to only sort on a certain vendor, then you have that option available to you there. So I could select a few different tasks here. I could select as many tasks as I want and then click next. And it's telling me which tasks I'm adding. I don't need to add a note, but if I wanted to at this point in time select a position, I can. For this case, I'm not going to. So I was able to select multiple tasks and they've been added to my workflow. One thing you may notice is that now from when you click inside a workflow, we no longer have the workflow tasks page. So forward.x, there was two different pages when you're clicking on the workflow name. The first is the task page, which showed you a list of what the task name and numbers were inside your workflow. But now it's and then it had the workflow steps page, and now it's only the workflow steps page. Instead, if you're wanting to see the name and the number for your task, it's a separate column here. So you do still have that information available to you. It's just not done from a separate page altogether. If I was wanting to make multiple changes or changes to the workflow steps, it's all done from right click, just like I've shown. So if I was wanting to edit a task that's within my workflow here, I would be able to edit. When I do that, you can see that that it opened in a second window. So now I'm seeing it's basically the task page that I'm seeing opened up in a separate window. So I'd be able to make all the changes that I wanted to make here and then close out of it. I also would be able to toggle back and forth between the two. I'll just close that. If I was wanting to make multiple changes, I could select the first, hold down Shift and select the last, and then right click. And I could make changes that way. So if I go down to change, I can select the position. So when I initially added these tasks to the workflow, I did have the option to select the positions at that time, but I chose not to select them. Let's say I decide I want to select the positions for the workflow. So there's no reason why you have to select the position at the workflow level. But if it's a workflow that you use often inside your scenarios, and you know that more often than not, it's a specific position that's completing the steps inside a scenario, then you might as well select the position at the workflow level. The reason for that is it saves you, a single click when you're adding the workflow to a scenario. You don't have to select the position at that time. But of course, if you haven't selected any positions, you'll always have the opportunity to select the position at the time that it's used inside a scenario. So it's up to you to decide whether or not you find that to be a time-saving exercise. So if I wanted to insert a task anywhere above one of the tasks that exists here, it would just be insert task above. I'd be able to copy tasks from my workflow to another workflow. So there's two options. I could copy, so obviously copy meaning I want this workflow in my current workflow, but I also want it pasted inside another workflow. Or if my task does not belong in this workflow at all, I could cut and then go and paste it into another workflow. Anytime you do cut, you do get the icon that's displayed on the left-hand side here, showing you that that's the task that you're cutting. So I'd be able to cut the task from the workflow, go back to my workflows. Oh, sorry. I can go into my other workflow. and I can paste. So I can paste, if I want to paste above something, I could select to paste above. Or if I wanted to paste to the very end, it's from the header, and I could paste to end. You want to make sure if you were doing a copy and paste that you're not selecting insert task above, because then if you select insert, it's going to assume that you want to insert a different task. So if you're pasting, it's of course paste. I'm going to go back to my task here. So I mentioned that we no longer assign interface transactions at the task level. It's done at the workflow or scenario level. So if I wanted to add a interface transaction to this particular workflow, I would right click and I would add interface. So when I do that, it gives me the add interfaces window. I'd be able to type into here if I wanted to, or I could select from this list, or I could also use this to filter. I could then select, I could select whatever items I wanted to select. Click save. And you can see that now they're added in this separate interfaces column here. So I'm going to go back out to another workflow here. So I searched on visit comma, and then I did the filter to show only workflows that were Cerner. So I showed you from the task page that when a task is used inside a workflow, it gives me the number in the number column here. That's still the same from the workflows page. So if I hover my cursor over, it tells me that this workflow is being used inside these two scenarios. So I'd be able to do the same thing that I showed you. So clicking the link, clicking the name of the scenario, which would then take me inside the scenario and allow me to go ahead and search for the workflow that I was looking to see where it's used inside a scenario. Like I showed before, if I hover over the description column, it's going to give me the list of all of the steps that are inside that workflow so that I don't have to click the workflow. Whereas in .x Transit at the workflow level, when you clicked the show icon, it gave you a list of task names and numbers, which maybe didn't really help so much for you to figure out what that workflow did. So now it's much easier to figure out if it's the correct workflow that you're wanting. Another thing is I can see that this workflow is being used in other scenarios. So let's say I go inside this workflow here, and I want to make a change to this step here. So I'm going to right click and say edit task. When I do that, it gives me this warning window. So this window is telling me that, okay, you're making a change to this task, but you need to know that if you make a change to this task task is being used inside these two scenarios. So you need to make sure that the change that you're making applies to both, because both of those scenarios are going to instantly be impacted by the change that I make. So .x, I guess it was more like an assumption that you knew that tasks carried across all of the different scenarios, but now we've got a warning so that you can be more mindful about how other scenarios are going to be impacted by your changes. So once you get that warning window, it is still going to allow you to make changes. So I would just click continue. And when I do that, it opens the task page for me to allow me to go ahead and make those changes. So it's not going to stop you, it's just going to warn you. So I'm going to close out because I don't need to make changes. So one of the changes you'll see is all of the details fields from the workflow steps page. It used to show in blue details shown inside brackets. And now instead of having the details inside brackets, we've got the click to add details. So when we click that link, it now opens up the details window and you're still able to type whatever details you wanted to type into this field. You can still also type the header field inside there, and it will still update and show in blue because it's still something that can be updated later, either at inside this workflow or inside a scenario. So same functionality, just a different link that you're clicking now. So that is everything for tasks and workflows. So I'm going to move on to scenarios unless anybody has any questions about that. No? Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so I'm going to start off by showing all of the clicks that we would be doing if you were creating a scenario inside TransIT from scratch. And then I'll go after into the functionality for getting from Excel into TransIT. So we no longer do imports, so that the link to import a script is no longer there. And that's because instead, it's all just a copy and paste from Excel into TransIT. So it still allows you to get all of your spreadsheet-based scripts into TransIT. It's actually just a lot easier to do now, and a slightly different way of going about doing it. So I'm going to start by creating a new scenario. So it's the same create icon. The number is still going to default the next number that's up for your scenarios, but you do still have that option to type into this field if you'd like. The category drop-down list. So we used to have 3 options available to you from the category drop-down list. So we have process and we have functional. We used to also have training, but nobody was actually using the training scenario, so we got rid of that feature. So I'm going to stick to creating a process scenario, and I'm going to do it in my current state. So that takes me to the scenario steps page, and now I can go ahead and start adding either tasks or workflows to my scenario. So again, you have the option to look at workflows only and include global. And again, we have 2 options here. In this case, the first option is showing me that this first 1487 is a global workflow, and the second one is one that is already active in my organization. You do have the option to hover your cursor over the description field to see exactly what the steps are inside that workflow. And as I said, when you are including global, if I was to select a workflow that is a workflow that is not inside my organization yet, even though I'm inside a scenario, it is going to import that workflow both into my scenario and then also into my workflows, but also because there's tasks underneath that workflow, there's going to be any task that exists inside that workflow will also come across. So if the content already exists inside your organization, TransIT will know that, and it'll know that you've got tasks there that you've maybe made changes to. So I'm going to just go ahead and add a few workflows to the scenario here. I'm going to stick with Cerner here.
Hello, we've lost your share screen.
Oh, really? Sorry. Did that just happen?
Yes.
Huh, I wonder why that happened. Are you good now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
I'm not sure, I must have clicked something accidentally, but thank you so much. Okay, so hopefully I didn't hopefully you didn't miss anything too much. Hopefully it was easy enough to follow along, but certainly please call out if there's anything that you need me to go back over. So all I've done is I've searched on appointment come and schedule. I have both workflows only and include global checked off. And I scrolled through, and then I also put on the filter for Cerner. And I was just going to throw together a few workflows to show. So I'm going to select this workflow here. And so that's for scheduling my appointment. So I know that after I schedule my appointment, I'm going to have someone that does need to go in and modify my appointment before the appointment is ready to be checked in. So let's say I want to select this workflow here. And then after that, my next step is going to be to actually check in the patient. So I will select this one here. So I just selected 3 workflows, and now I'm going to click next. So what that's going to allow me to do, so it does show me what I've selected. And if I scroll through this list here, it's also going to show me exactly what it is that I'm adding to my scenario. If I scroll there, you can see that it gets to 21 and then starts at 1 again. And that's because that's the beginning of that second workflow that I selected. So we now have the option to select multiple workflows at one time when inserting into a scenario. And it does understand the order in which you selected the workflow. So even though I selected workflows that weren't necessarily in the right chronological order from that previous window that I was in, it does know which was the first workflow that I selected, which was the second, and so on. So then again, here's where the second workflow ends and the third one picks up. I can select the facility that I want for my scenario. I can identify the day number, so it's going to automatically default to 0, but it's still, I can type into this field if I want it to be a different day number. I can select the position, so these are scheduling, so I'm going to select scheduler and click save. And so now it's added all 3 of those workflows to my scenario. And as I said, if any of those workflows did not previously exist inside my organization, now they do. In this version of TransIT, so in 5.0 TransIT, we no longer have the scenario tasks page. It's just the scenario steps page. From the scenario steps page in 4.x, if you wanted to make changes to multiple steps within a scenario, you had those arrows that were displayed on the left-hand side. So we no longer have those arrows, but of course we can still make changes. So you would select the first task that you want to make the change for, and then select the last and do a right click. And when you right click, you have these options here. So let's say, so if I scroll down to change, this is where I would change if I want to change the position, if I want to change the day. So I'm currently in a process-based scenario, so it has day listed. Whereas if I was in a functional scenario, instead of day, I would have section. So I could change the position, day, or facility. So let's say I'm going to have a different position here. So I'm going to instead have these first done by the scheduling supervisor. And so that would be how we do a change to multiple steps now. If I want to make a change at the task level from inside a scenario, I would right click and do edit task. And just like I showed from under a workflow, because this is used in different scenarios, it's giving me the warning to say, if you're making changes to this task, you're affecting these other scenarios as well. So when I click continue, it opens that task specifically into a separate window, and I'd be able to make the changes to that task, which would right away make changes to the scenario and any other scenario that the task was used in, which is the same as how it works in 4.x TransIT. And when I'm finished making my changes, I can click the X to close out that window, and then I'm right back inside my scenario here. I can change the details fields. It's going to look the exact same. And that's updated here. Obviously, that's not appropriate in this particular case, but that would be how you add details at the scenario level. I also could copy from one scenario to another. So as I showed, if I want to copy, I would copy and then go into my other scenario and paste. Or I could cut if these tasks don't belong inside this scenario, I could cut from here and paste into another scenario. Or if I want to cut from here and paste into a different section of my scenario. So let's just say, for example, these don't belong here, instead they belong here. I can paste above, and it's moved everything around now. And if I want to remove a task, it's just inactivate. I mentioned that interface transactions are either done at the workflow or the scenario level now. So I can right click and add an interface, and it's going to be the exact same window that we saw previously. So I can select whichever interfaces I want to select and click save. And that instantly adds them under the interface column, which does give me a details field that I can add details to if I need to. So I haven't done anything to the header yet for my scenario. So I can right click the header column here and select edit header. So if you have colleagues who did the training session, any of the previous testing training sessions, I did not have this available. This is brand new, added as of last night. So now, so you'll have to spread the word. But to get to the header from inside the scenario, I right clicked the header of TransIT here and I select edit header. And that brings me to the header page for the scenario. I could also get to it. So if I went back to the scenarios page, I could also get to it by right-clicking here and edit header here. If I want to start adding details to my header, I would click this pencil icon. And so then I could select all the fields that I want to include. So again, this looks slightly different than it looked yesterday. So I would be able to select, I could also, you know, if I wanted to search for something. You'll need to log something about that. So again, during or inside this demonstration domain, there may be a few kind of hiccups that we see. There's still a few things being ironed out before we go live on May 29th. So I'm going to go back into here now. And now I can select all of the fields that I want to select. You should be able to search, so that will be fixed today. So I can select whichever fields that I want to include for my scenario and click add. And then I can see that they've been added to the scenario header. If I wanted to actually add the values inside there, I can click to edit details and I can type whatever you want to name your patient. And then it's been added here. If you wanted to decide which is going to be the field that shows on the dashboard inside a round of testing, you would just click the checkbox here and it would give a check here. But that doesn't need to be selected at the scenario level necessarily. You can do it when you have your test round set up under testing. So we haven't gotten there just yet. I will. So if I want to go back to, I can click to close out of this and go back to my scenario. One thing about 5.0 TransIT, in 4.x, you used to have a link that was for whether you wanted 30 rows, 100 rows, or all rows displayed on each page. And then there was a link for the different page numbers. We no longer have those. Instead, we have the page options displayed down here. I'll go inside a different scenario that has more pages. And so you can see here that this is page 1 of 7. So you can, of course, use the arrows to move back and forth between different pages. Or if you wanted everything to display on one page, you would right-click the header and do page size all. So page size all is available on pretty much all of the pages throughout TransIT. So anytime you're on a page in TransIT and you're wanting to see all of the options that are displayed on that that are available on that page, you would just do the page size all, and that would put everything. So now you can see everything's all on one page here. So that is it for a scenario that is a scenario being documented inside TransIT. Are there any questions before I move into a scenario that is from an upload or a spreadsheet, I should say? Okay, so I'm going to go back out to my scenarios here. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you start with your Excel spreadsheet is you're going to want to create the name of your scenario, give it a number, and then select the category in the project and click Save. So of course that's brought me into a blank scenario because I've got nothing added in there yet. So now I'm going to open up my spreadsheet. And so when you were uploading a spreadsheet previously in TransIT, you had to make sure it was a specific version of Excel and a few other things before you'd be able to actually import your workflow or your scenario, into TransIT. Now, the biggest things that you need to make sure is that your column headers here match exactly what you have inside TransIT here. And so when we go live with this on May 29th, we'll also have files saved under our reports for templates for the headers, which we have right now inside TransIT to make sure that all of the headings of your scenario match what they need to be in order to be able to copy and paste into TransIT. So I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet here. So I know I've got all of my columns appropriate now. The task and workflow columns do not matter. And so I'm going to I'll just copy a chunk here. And then I'm going to right click and copy, or I could also Control C. And I have gone back into TransIT now. So now that I'm ready to paste, I'm going to right click my header here and I'm going to select Paste from Clipboard. When I do that, it gives me this window here. And this is showing me exactly what I am wanting to paste into TransIT. So there's a few things that you want to watch out for here. One is that if you happen to have your columns off, TransIT doesn't know that, and so it's going to just paste into the exact column that you ask it to paste into. So let's say I was off on my columns and I had all of my actions listed in the outcomes column and all of my outcomes in the facility column. It's going to end up pasting everything into the wrong spots. So when you do your paste, you're going to get this window here, and so you can scroll through this list here to see if there's anything that it's not recognizing. So in this case, I can see that Power Plans is displaying in red. And so that means that I guess however Power Plans is listed inside TransIT is just slightly different. And so it's telling me that whatever I have in my spreadsheet doesn't match exactly what is inside TransIT. If there was a position that didn't exist, so let's say the RN didn't actually exist inside my organization, it would display in red. And when I go to paste, it would just blank that out. So any field that is red that it's not recognizing, it's just going to be blanked out of your paste altogether. It'll just be a blank field. So you'd have to address that after the fact. So in this case, with it not recognizing Power Plans, when you do the paste, it's going to back itself up to the next thing that it recognizes. So in TransIT, the vendor level is, of course, Cerner. The product level is PowerChart. The application level is Power Plans. And then there's probably functions that exist underneath that. So when it doesn't understand something at the application level, it's going to back it up to the product level. Another thing you'll see is there's some funky looking characters. So there's something that was from my copy that it's not recognizing. In 4.x transit, if I had characters like that in, it would just paste it and those funky looking characters would end up being inside your organization. But although it's looking like it doesn't recognize some of those characters, it will look fine when I go and do my paste. So the only thing it's not recognizing here is my power plans. And so of course, when you're, doing your first tries, doing a copy and paste from TransIT, you may need, have more red fields in that you need to, update or just get used to the process of doing a copy and paste. But so for me, it's only showing me that there's those changes, so I'm not too concerned because I can change that once I edit my scenario after the fact. So I'm going to say, okay, this looks good enough to me. I'm going to accept all of this and click save. And so now you can see that all of those steps have been pasted into TransIT. Because it was content that didn't previously exist inside TransIT, it did assign a ZZZ task to all of my different lines in from the Excel spreadsheet. And so that's what you normally get inside TransIT. You get those ZZZ tasks that these are, fully functioning tasks. If I want to use these tasks from inside another scenario, I can still copy from this scenario and paste them into a different one, just like you can in 4.x. But I mentioned that even though there were certain characters that it wasn't recognizing, it still looks nice and clean. It looks exactly the way it looked inside my spreadsheet. So if you pasted, and I mentioned that, let's say the RN didn't exist, it would have completely blanked that out. And so I would have to right click and do edit task, which you see opened it in the second window like it has been all along. I'd be able to make the change. If there was a change that I need to make, I can make it here and then click close. Sorry, I said if I want to change the position. So I would right click and select change and select change position. So if it was blank there, I could have just gone here and selected whatever position I want. In this case, it is the RN, so I'll just leave it as the RN. But if you want to change it to a different position, you would just select the different option from the drop down and click save. Oh, sorry, I did make a change. Oops, sorry, that's not what I meant to do. This login column is pulling from my login column under the org settings, which is what it has always done. If you're someone who is set up as an administrator, you have the capability to update that under the user settings. If you are not somebody who has admin set up and you are noticing something that's wrong, then you just need to get in touch with whoever at your site is set up as an administrator, and they'd be able to update that information for you. So if I wanted to, let's say, copy from here back to Excel, I would do the multi-select, so using the shift, and I would select the copy to clipboard option. So that would be anywhere that you have those options inside TransIT, the copy to clipboard and paste from clipboard, that's just meaning that you're able to copy outside of TransIT. I was asked during one of my previous calls whether or not if you copied from, if I copied this scenario into Excel and then pasted back because it has these task numbers listed here, if it would recognize the task numbers. It would not. So it would end up creating additional tasks for all of those fields. So if you're wanting to use steps that you have in one scenario from an upload, you would want to do the copy and then copy from TransIT and paste from TransIT into that other scenario, as opposed to copying to Clipboard and then pasting back from Clipboard, because then you're just going to end up with duplicate tasks all over the place, which is extra work when it comes to maintaining your scenarios, which is what we're hoping that you stay away from doing. So although it's a different method of doing things, I'm quite certain that once you've had a chance to do it a couple times, you'll decide that the copy and paste now is much easier than how it previously was for uploading a script into TransIT. So the next up is testing, but does anybody have any questions, or is there anything that I should go back over from a scenario perspective before I move on to testing? Nope. All right, I'm going to move on to testing then. Okay, so I selected testing from the blue bar, and that's brought me to the test rounds page. So 4.x version of TransIT, it was called the test execution page. So the page has just been renamed to test rounds, but it is the same page that still has the same capabilities from this page, just a new name. Some of the other changes, you'll notice there's fewer icons here that there used to be. So these icons are all the same, but we no longer have the position dashboard icon. And the reason for that is because it's no longer a separate dashboard. It's actually just a filter on the regular dashboard. So I'll show that in a minute. It's much easier to go back and forth between the position dashboard and the regular dashboard. You also have the option to, oops, if I right click over here, you would be able to add scripts, which you've always been able to. So let's say you realize that you're looking at your round of testing and there was a script that was missing, you'd be able to add test script, which would allow you to search for the script that you're wanting to add. So I could type the search in here, or I could use the filters here if I didn't want to use the scroll bar to look. And you would just select whichever scenario or script you want to add and click next, which would then add the additional script to your test round. The testing column is slightly different now. The links in the testing column have been slightly renamed. So it used to say continue testing and never had a day number. Now it says continue day 1, or you can see here it has day 0. So instead of continue testing or start testing, it's start day or continue day, and then includes the number for you to select as well. If you're wanting to put a scenario on hold, for that X TransIT, it was a link. Now it is a checkbox. So all you need to do to put one on hold would be to select the box there, or deselect the box if you don't want it to be on hold anymore. You are able to view the header from the test rounds page. So the test execution page never had the headers available. But if you're wanting to view the header from the test rounds page, you would just right click on that scenario and select edit test header, which then opened it in a separate window here. So then you have the icon that you can click to make changes. And this would be where you want to select which is the dashboard option that you want. So whether you wanted to show the patient's name, which likely is the case for the beginning of testing, but when you're on your later days where the only people left are your HIM people and your accounting people, you probably want to see the FIN number as opposed to, or maybe you want to see the MRN number, probably the FIN number, but as opposed to seeing the patient's name in that field. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my dashboard. And this is the field that I was talking about. So in this case here, we have it set to show the patient name. But if I right clicked here, I would be able to select something else. I don't see the MRN number here, but I'd be able to select a different option here just by checking the box. So looking at the test dashboard here, we still get the icons to say that there's steps from a previous day that have not been executed on. So the red exclamation mark shows that there's steps outstanding from a previous day of testing, as if it was yellow, it would let you know that you're falling behind. So we're only at 10 a.m. now, so we're not going to see that icon today. But if we were at least 50% of the way through the day and not 50% of the way through a scenario for testing, then we would get that icon in yellow as a warning that we're falling behind. And then we still have the clock icon, which is the notification icon to tell you that a scenario has not been acted on in at least 10 minutes. What you just saw there is my screen refreshing. We know you no longer have to click the screen, click a link on the screen to refresh. It is now done automatically. We previously had the single refresh or the auto refresh, and now it just does it automatically for you. So not something that you need to click on. If I wanted to view the header, it would just be right-clicking in the header column to select the edit test header. So right now I'm looking at the full dashboard, but I mentioned that the position dashboard is now contained within the main dashboard. So I have this icon here, which is the same icon that we saw when I was in the user settings. So we know from earlier on in our training day that I had set up the EDRN to be my positions that I'm covering for a round of testing. So if I want to filter my dashboard to only show stuff that's for the EDRN, I can click that icon here. So you can see I'm still on the same dashboard, but it's now filtered to only show EDRN. So if I look at the position column here, it only shows the EDRN here. It also has stuff listed in the weight column. So this is telling me that in the first and last scenario here, I have steps that I need to wait on before my steps are up. But in the middle two, I am the step that is up next inside TransIT. So from a workflow perspective, and I don't mean TransIT workflow, I mean from a day-to-day workflow perspective, if there are steps that you are able to act on, even though you're not up next inside the scenario, if you want to access your steps right away, so here it says I'm not up for 9, but I'm the EDRN and I know I can act on my steps now, I can click the action from the action column. When I do that, it brings my steps right up to the top here, and I can go ahead and start acting on my steps right away. If if I'm not comfortable going ahead with those steps, I want to first make sure I take a look and see what those steps are before I execute my steps. If I click the scenario name link, it's going to take me to the beginning of the scenario for the steps that are up. So here we can see it's got the registration steps, and then here's my EDRN steps. So the action link will take you directly to your steps, whereas the scenario name link takes you to the beginning of the scenario, which is slightly different because in 4.x, both links did the exact same thing. Another thing that you'll notice is we have the kind of person icon that's displayed beside the position. And when I hover my cursor over, it shows me exactly who the person is that is covering for that position. Whereas in 4.x transit, it was a green dotted underline to indicate that someone had been selected. So same functionality, just a different identification method. It still retains that I have the position filter on. If I want to get rid of the position filter, so I once again want to see the entire dashboard, I can right click this position column header, and I can say to remove the filtered positions. And when I do that, it once again gives me the entire dashboard to view. If I click the icon again, it's of course going to put on the same filter. I also have the option, if I right click here, to select positions to cover. So when I do that, it gives me that exact same window that we saw at the very beginning of training when I was in my user settings here. So if I hadn't set my positions under my user settings, this is where I would go to set my positions. Also, if I hadn't set my positions yet, if I had clicked this icon, it would have opened this same window. But because I did set positions earlier, it knew that and filtered for me. So let's say I'm going to change to the EDMD. I search there, and now I'm going to select both of these and click Save. So now it once again puts on the filter to just show the dashboard for those specific positions. So in both cases, I selected both the EDRNs and the EDMDs. I could have selected multiple different ED positions, or whatever your position is that you're covering. I could have selected as many as I needed to in order to have the correct dashboards created for me. So still the same that we have a position dashboard, it's just much different the look of it now. So the other icon here, so sorry, I'm going to remove this. And this icon here is to show all days of testing. So by default, your dashboard is going to show you any days from testing that have steps that have not been completed yet, and then today's day of testing. So in 4.x transit, it was a more or less link, and now those links are not available. It's this icon here. And so, of course, when I click that, it blows it out and shows me all the different days of testing for my scenarios. And I can click back to go back to the view that I was at before. And just like in 4.x transit, we have all the same information displayed on the dashboard for the number of steps and whether they've been passed, flagged, issued, or skipped, and then the percentage. So that information is all still the same. So let's say I'm ready to go ahead and start executing on steps in my scenario. So I'm going to, in this case, use the scenario name link. And in 4.x transit, we had those, all of the icons were displayed on the left-hand side, and we had the arrows that were displayed for doing multiple steps at once. So instead now we only have the pass icon that's displayed on screen. So of course, if I wanted to pass this step, I would just do pass. You can see that that step was immediately removed from my view. So 4.x transit, if you passed a step or did something that kept you on the same step because the step wasn't, because the screen hasn't refreshed, it still had the pass at the top, but now anytime a step is executed on, the step automatically falls off the view. If I wanted to do multiple, it's the same as everywhere else in transit. Click the first one, hold shift, click the last that I want to select, and then right click, and then I can still pass multiple steps all at the same time. I'm gonna pass these two because they're manual. If I wanted to mark or flag something, if I right click and select flag, it then is going to open me up to this window here, which I know we were always taken to the test notes page. So the first, it's got 3 separate tabs. The first tab is for giving your test notes. So I'm going to say that this is, I think this is an issue. I'm going to assign it to somebody. And then the reported by field is going to default to me. But you can still select different options from the drop-down list. In 4.x transit, you could type into these fields. So even if the person or the team didn't exist inside transit, you could still just free type into there. Now you cannot. So if there's something that's missing from your fields here, then you would need to touch base with someone who is the administrator within your organization at transit, and they can add that for you. But you can still change the reported by as well, and type whatever you need to into the test note. I can click the steps tab, which then shows me exactly what that step is. Or I can select the attachments tab and select a attachment, a screenshot to include for my test note. So when I'm done, I can click save. So let's say because I flagged that step, I'm going to skip a number of steps because whatever that issue was in that step, it prevents me from completing all of these steps. So I selected all of those and I'm going to skip. So they all fall off the view here. If I want to, so by default, the status column is only going to show you the remaining steps. But if I click this filter, I have the option to add back certain things. So I skipped a number of steps, but let's say whatever the issue was had been rectified and I'm ready to go back and execute on those steps. I can select skipped here to include skipped from my view. And so if I want to then reset, I would select them all and select to reset the status. And it gives me back all of the past icons there. Same would be if I flagged something. So if I click to flag, it now, because I asked, it's going to show me all of the flag steps as well. And also in this test note column shows me all of the test notes that have been logged for those steps. Your dashboard is also going to go based on your computer's time zone. So let's say you are someone who on your own, you work in central time zone if you're working from your own computer, but the site that you're working with is actually based in Eastern Standard Time. If you were participating in a round of testing and your computer set to central, but the test dashboard is set to Eastern. If you're caring about those, if I go back to my dashboard here. If you care about all of these icons on the side, so if you want to be able to see the outstanding ones and the hour, the yellow one for when it's 12 o'clock and you're not 50% of the way through, you just would need to temporarily change the time on your PC to match the time zone of whatever the dashboard is set to. So that's just if you care to make sure that those icons are showing up for you. That is about it for testing. The test dashboard. We still have these same icons here. So if I want to view the test report, it's the same icon that you're used to seeing, same with the summary charts and the issue list. So if I want to go to my test report, I would click this icon. And it would bring in all of that information. If I needed to make a change, I could right click and I could open my test note again. It's going to bring in everything that I had that was initially logged in here. But so if I say I made the change and now I think that this is this has been reviewed, but someone else is going to need to make sure that whatever I did that they want to, review again before it's marked as addressed, or however you at your organization deal with issues. You can make the changes that you're used to making, and then you can select if you need to change either the assigned to or the reported by, and click save, and it's going to maintain all of those details that I added there. If, let's say, I wanted to create an issue from a test note, I can right click and do issue, which then opens up the issue page here. It also brings in all of the information that was previously logged at the test note level, which is still how 4.x currently works. So I'd be able to select all of the things I need to select for my note. I can give my update here. And complete all the information that you want to complete. And I could attach a screenshot as well, which is going to be the same. Click here to browse the files that are on my computer. I can then click save, and you can see that now. So the left-hand side is still all of your test notes, and the right side is still your issues. I, of course, can edit this issue and make whatever changes I need to make to the issue there. And you could also see that you've got the copy to clipboard. So if I wanted to, let's say, copy all of these and do copy to clipboard, if you do not track your issues inside TransIT, then you'd be able to export all of this to Excel to put it into whichever program you use for tracking your test notes and your issues. So the pie charts, the summary charts are still going to look mostly the same. So still gives me all of the information based on my round of testing. And then if I wanted to view my issue list, it's still this icon here. When I do that, you can see that there are the 4 icons that we were just seeing. There's a bit of a break here, and then there's 5 additional icons. These 4 icons are all based on information for your round of testing, whereas these 5 have to do with issues from an organization perspective as a whole. So I could type into this field. If I had a big long list here, I'd be able to type into here to search. You can see it says search by task number or name. I could search for that information in here. I could also use my different column filters. So if I only wanted to see all of the options that are currently set at open, it's a faster way to sort, to filter all of your columns here. So again, those are issues that are just to do with the round of testing that you were on. And then these ones are for issues as a whole for your organization. So I could either, I could click issues here, or if I clicked any of these icons here, it would take me to the issues page for my organization. So when I do that, you can see it's got, excuse me, broken down by project, all the different issues that I have for my organization. The first icon here, if I click, it's going to show me all of the issues for my organization, regardless of the status that they're at. So then I would just need to use my different column filters to be able to change if I wanted to refine my view. The next icon, and as you saw there, it said loading because it does auto refresh on this page as well. So if I wanted to click to see only the opened issues, it's this icon here. And so now it's filtered to only show open issues. If I wanted to see issues that were assigned to me specifically, I can click this icon here. And now it's only showing issues that were assigned to me. If I wanted to see the most recently viewed issues, I can click this icon here. And that's what we're looking at here. If you're the person who's responsible for managing a round of testing, you may want to bookmark a particular set of filters to a URL. So let's say if I click this icon here, it gives me this window here, and it does tell you that you can generate a URL which you can bookmark to filter the issues. So let's say I'm the person managing the round of testing, and I care about looking at all of the open issues that are in the status of blocker and critical. So you can see I could select as many options as I wanted from that drop down list. I could also select options from these fields as well. And then I click create. So when I did that, it filtered my view to be based on whatever I asked for it to. But I would also be able to bookmark this particular URL. When I do that, I can then, it'll function the same way any bookmark does on the internet. You could just click back to it and have it open right up to your issue list that has the filters that that you save to your bookmark there. So it's something you may want to. The other thing with the issues is when you right click, you've got different right click options. So I could edit my issue, which is going to open the window back up again, and I can provide any edits that I want to make. I could also right click and I could resolve the issue. When I resolve the issue, it opens that exact same window, But when I do that, it automatically puts the status of my issue as resolved. I could then still, type whatever changes I wanted to for that issue. Same would be the case if I selected close, it would automatically set the status of my issue to be closed. If I wanted to view changes, so let's say I'm following an issue, I want to know what changes have been made to that issue. If I right click and select view changes, oh, I guess that one doesn't have changes. Find one that does. So it should show me all of the changes that have been made for a particular issue, or all of the changes that anybody had made for an issue. Anytime that if you have your notifications, so your email notifications turned on, anytime an issue has been either assigned to you or an issue that is assigned to you has a change made to it, you will receive an email, a notification to let you know what's going on with that issue, or if it's assigned to you to let you know, hey, there's an issue that's been assigned to you. You also can receive those from a round of testing. So if there are steps in a round of testing that you're responsible for and they haven't been acted on in at least 10 minutes, you'll receive an email saying, oh, by the way, you're the person who's up in this round of testing. And so you'll want to make sure that you act on those steps. You also will receive a email that has a URL that takes you right to that issue. So it would open up that issue for you inside TransIT. Something new is we have follow issue. So let's say you're not the person reporting on the issue and you're not the person who the issue was assigned to, but you still, whatever the issue was, it's something that does affect you and you do want to follow the changes on that issue. You can click to follow the issue. You're not going to see anything here. They just do like a loading in the bottom of the screen here, but it then set me up to any time that a change was made to this issue, I would be sent an email to let me know what those changes are. Because I did that, it sent me this. There, it sent me this email here, and this was the information for the issue that I said that I wanted to be following. And so if I was to click on this, it would open up the issue for me inside TransIT in a separate window. So if you already had TransIT open, they would open in a separate window for you. And so again, you need to have your user settings set up to have your email address in there if you wanted to be receiving those notifications. So all that is left is reports. But was there anything that you wanted me to go back over, whether it's in regards to issues or testing or really anything that has been before that? No? Okay, I'm going to go on to reports then. Okay, so there are no new reports that have been added. There are some that have been taken away, and that's just because nobody was using them. So we figured if no one's using them, there's no reason for us to have them anymore. So one of the biggest changes when it comes to reports is that reports now run in the background. So there's certain reports that would take quite a long time to run, like the test planning report, because it's looking at a lot of data and it's trying to generate in Excel a lot of data for you. And so once you had selected to run the report, your screen would sit there waiting for the report to run. But now it runs in the background. So you could generate your report and then click elsewhere in TransIT and keep doing whatever it is you were doing inside TransIT. So I'm going to click on the test planning report. I'm going to select to run. So HTML version would have it just be in TransIT version, but I'm going to run it in Excel. I'm going to select to look at the process-based scenarios, and I'm going to select all of these ones here. After I do that, I can select to run. When you do that, it takes you to the report output page, and you can see it's starting to generate my report here. So I can click away, and I can continue on my day, and I can come back to reports. And if I click this icon that's in the top here, it's View Generated Reports. When I'm ready, I can come back and I can look. So I can see, okay, this report is still in the process of being completed. And then, of course, as I said that, it completed. So when my report has completed running, I can then click to open it. And it's open down here in Excel. And so the report is going to look the exact same as it always has looked inside TransIT. So it's giving you the two different tabs, the tabs for positions, and then the tab for scenarios. So the biggest change then again is that just that reports can run in the background and you can go away and come back to see your reports after they've finished running. And that is everything. So I know I'm done a little bit early, but I can stay on the call if people want to continue play in TransIT, and I can sit here for if you have any questions. But that is all the new content that I was planning to show you today. So thank you everybody for participating.
I'm sorry, how do you run the report again? Like, I'm in that field, but like, how do you actually?
So all you would do when you open this window here.
Oh, okay.
I click Run Report. So
it didn't happen with my domain.
The HTML version, it was having an issue the other day, and I don't know that it's been rectified. But if you click the Run Report, it opens this window for you, allows you to select whichever you want to run, and then you would click Run. And when you do that, it takes you to that page. I'm not going to run it again. It takes you to this page that has the report output. And so you just need to wait for until it says completed, and then you'd be able to click on the Excel link for your report.
Okay, yeah, when I click on the reports that are here in my test domain, like none of them have a run option.
Okay,
So maybe they just up, right, or something.
There's a couple that have not been updated just yet. Let's see. Yeah, this one is not different yet. It's still in our old version.
Okay, that's what all right, I'm just picking ones that are not in the proper version and the ones I've been clicking on.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, there are, like I said, there's a few little things that are not, that didn't really take top priority in our upgrade. So they are things that will be worked on. They just haven't been updated yet.
Okay. Oh yeah, I just clicked on one and now I have the run reports. Okay, so yeah, I was just looking at ones that were not built for the newer version. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm gonna shut off the recording now.